The rain had finally stopped by the time Robert Chen pulled his silver Mercedes into the parking lot of La Belle Maison. He checked his Rolex, frowning at the time. 6:30. He was already 15 minutes late for his dinner meeting with potential investors, and he hated being late. It made him look unprofessional, and tonight's meeting was too important for any mistakes. Robert straightened his tie in the rearview mirror and stepped out of the car. At 42 years old, he had built tech vision solutions from a small startup in his garage to one of the most successful technology companies in the city. He employed over 300 people now, and his company was worth millions. Success had come with a certain confidence, some might say arrogance, but Robert preferred to think of it as knowing his worth. The restaurant was one of those fancy places where the menu didn't have prices, and the waiters wore crisp white shirts with black vests. Robert came here often. He liked how people recognized him, how the staff treated him like royalty. It made him feel like he had truly made it. He pushed through the heavy glass doors and immediately spotted Gerald, the manager, near the host stand. Gerald's face brightened when he saw Robert approaching. "Mr. Chen, good evening," Gerald said, reaching out to shake his hand. "Your usual table is running late, I know," Robert interrupted. "Are my guests here yet?" "They arrived about 10 minutes ago. However, I'm afraid there's been a small complication." Gerald looked uncomfortable. "Your usual table in the private corner is occupied. There was a mix-up with the reservations. I can seat you in the main dining area, or if you'd prefer to wait, the main dining area." Robert's jaw tightened. "Gerald, you know I always sit in the private section. That's where I conduct business." "I understand, Mr. Chen, and I sincerely apologize. The party at your usual table had a reservation that was booked weeks ago, but I've arranged one of our best tables near the window. It's actually quite fine. Whatever. Just show me where they are." Robert wasn't interested in excuses. He paid good money to eat here, and they couldn't even manage to keep his regular table available. Gerald led him through the dimly lit restaurant. The place was packed tonight, every table filled with well-dressed diners. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and soft classical music played in the background. Robert spotted his guests at a round table near the large bay windows. David Wu and Patricia Morrison stood up to greet him as he approached. "Robert, good to see you," David said, shaking his hand firmly. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible." Robert took his seat and immediately scanned the table. Water glasses were full, bread basket in the center, but no menus yet. They made small talk for a few minutes, discussing the weather and the restaurant's ambiance. Robert was in the middle of explaining his vision for the company's expansion when a young woman approached their table. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Alicia, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." She had a warm smile and carried herself with quiet confidence. She was a black woman in her mid-20s, hair pulled back neatly, wearing the restaurant's standard uniform. Robert barely glanced at her. "We'll need a few minutes." "Of course. Can I start you off with something to drink while you look over the menu?" Patricia ordered a glass of white wine. David asked for sparkling water. When Alicia turned to Robert, he waved his hand dismissively. "Scotch, neat, top shelf." "We have several excellent scotches available," Alicia said politely. "The Macallan 18 is particularly—" "I know what scotch is," Robert cut her off. "Just bring me whatever's most expensive. I'm sure you can figure that out." Alicia's smile didn't waver, though something flickered in her eyes. "Right away, sir." As she walked away, Robert turned back to his guests. "Now, where were we?" "Oh yes, the expansion plans." Alicia returned a few minutes later with their drinks and menus. She set each glass down carefully, then handed out the menus. "Have either of you dined with us before?" she asked David and Patricia. "First time," Patricia said. "What do you recommend?" "The pan-seared salmon is exceptional tonight, and the chef does a wonderful filet mignon if you prefer something heartier. We also have a special risotto with wild mushrooms that's not on the menu." Robert let out a short laugh. "Since when do waitresses give food recommendations? Just tell us what's expensive and we'll decide what tastes good." The table went quiet. Patricia looked down at her menu uncomfortably. David cleared his throat. At a nearby table, an older couple glanced over, having heard the comment. Alicia maintained her professional composure. "I understand, sir. I simply thought sharing some popular dishes might be helpful. I'll give you all a few minutes to decide." She turned to leave. "Wait," Robert called out, his voice loud enough to carry. "Since you're so eager to give advice, tell me something. Did you go to college?" Alicia turned back slowly. Yes, sir, I did. Let me guess. Liberal arts? Communications? Robert leaned back in his chair, a smirk on his face. That's usually what people in service jobs studied, right? If you don't mind me asking. Robert, Patricia started, but he held up his hand. I'm just curious. No offense intended. But his tone suggested otherwise. I mean, here I am running a multi-million-dollar tech company, and I'm getting food advice from someone who probably studied poetry or something. Alicia stood perfectly still. I studied computer science, actually. At MIT. Robert laughed again, louder this time. Right. Computer science from MIT, and you're working as a waitress. That's a good one. Robert, that's enough, David said quietly, but his words had no effect. I'm serious, Robert continued. What happened? Couldn't hack it in the real world. Because I hire computer science people all the time, and let me tell you, the ones who actually know their stuff don't end up serving tables. Alicia's hands gripped the small notepad she was holding just a bit tighter, but her voice remained calm. Sometimes life is more complicated than it appears, sir. Now I'll give you some time with the menus. This time Robert let her go. He turned back to his guests with a satisfied grin, as if he'd just won some kind of debate. But Patricia was staring at him with an expression that was hard to read. Disappointment, maybe, or disgust. That was uncalled for, she said flatly. Oh, come on. I was just having a little fun. These people hear worse all the time. Robert opened his menu, already moving on. Now let's talk business. I wanted to show you both the quarterly projections. But the mood at the table had shifted. David and Patricia exchanged glances, and the easy conversation from earlier was gone. Robert didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. He was too busy thinking about his presentation, about the numbers he was going to show them, about how impressed they would be with everything he had built. He had no idea that the waitress he had just mocked was about to change his entire life. Alicia walked back to the server station, her heart pounding in her chest. She had dealt with rude customers before. In the 2 years she'd been working at La Belle Maison, she'd served plenty of entitled people who looked down on her. But something about Robert Chen's smug attitude had gotten under her skin. She took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was here. The money was good, really good, and she needed every penny of it. Her student loans were suffocating her, nearly $200,000 in debt from MIT. Then there were her mother's medical bills. The cancer treatments, the medications that insurance wouldn't cover, her younger brother's college tuition that she had promised to help with, a PhD in computer science from one of the best schools in the country, and here she was, carrying plates and enduring insults from people who thought they were better than her. Life had a funny way of humbling you. You okay? Jenny, another server, touched her arm gently. I heard what that guy said to you. I'm fine, Alicia said, forcing a smile. Just another day in paradise, right? She picked up the water pitcher and headed back to the dining room. Professional, composed. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing he'd bothered her. When she approached the table again, Robert was in full presentation mode. He had pulled out his tablet and was showing David and Patricia some kind of graphs and charts. His voice carried across the nearby tables, loud and confident. So as you can see, our team just solved one of the biggest problems we've been facing. This algorithm has been giving us headaches for months. We're talking about processing speeds, data optimization, the whole 9 yards. He swiped to another screen. My lead developer finally cracked it last week. The solution is brilliant, really. We're using a modified binary search tree with dynamic memory allocation. Alicia was refilling David's water glass when she heard this. She paused just for a second. She knew exactly what Robert was talking about. She'd actually worked on a similar problem during her doctoral research. The beauty of it, Robert continued, clearly enjoying being the center of attention, is that it reduces our processing time by 40%. We implemented it into our main system yesterday, and the results are already showing. Alicia bit her lip. She shouldn't say anything. It wasn't her place. She was just the waitress, remember? Just someone who couldn't hack it in the real world, according to him. But she couldn't help herself. Excuse me, she said quietly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but are you using standard or balanced binary search trees? Robert looked up at her, annoyed at the interruption. What? For your algorithm? Are you using standard or balanced binary search trees? Because if you're dealing with dynamic datasets, which it sounds like you are, A standard binary search tree might create bottlenecks when the data becomes skewed. The table went silent. Patricia's eyebrows went up. David leaned forward, suddenly interested. Robert stared at Alicia like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. Then he laughed. It was a sharp, mocking sound. Are you serious right now? Did you just try to tell me how to run my company? I wasn't trying to— No, please, continue. Robert's voice dripped with sarcasm. Apparently, our waitress here knows more about advanced algorithms than my entire development team. This should be good. Alicia felt her face getting warm. I was just suggesting that if you're experiencing performance issues with large data sets— Performance issues? Robert cut her off. We just improved our speed by 40%. That's the opposite of a performance issue. But please enlighten us with your vast expertise from serving salmon and pouring wine. A few people at nearby tables had stopped eating. They were watching now, sensing the tension. Robert, maybe we should just— Patricia started, but he ignored her. You know what? I'm curious now. Robert leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. You claim you went to MIT. You clearly think you understand computer science. So tell me, oh wise waitress, what exactly is wrong with our solution? Alicia should have walked away. Every instinct told her to apologize, smile, and leave. But years of being overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated came bubbling to the surface. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to be mocked by someone who didn't even understand the basics of what he was bragging about. The problem, she said, her voice steady now, is that binary search trees have a worst-case time complexity of ON when they become unbalanced. If your data has any kind of pattern or order to it, your tree will skew and your 40% improvement will disappear. You'll actually end up with worse performance than before. Robert's smile faded slightly. That's theoretical nonsense. It's not theoretical. It's computer science fundamentals. What you probably need is a self-balancing tree, like an AVL or red-black tree. They maintain O-log n time complexity regardless of data patterns. Or better yet, if you're dealing with large-scale data optimization, you might want to look at B-trees or even hash tables depending on your access patterns. David was nodding slowly. Patricia was watching Robert's face, which had gone from amused to uncertain to something approaching anger. If you're so smart, Robert said, his voice rising, then prove it. He grabbed a napkin from the table and pulled a pen from his jacket pocket. Here, show me. Solve the problem. Design a better solution right now. Robert, this is ridiculous, Patricia said. She's working. We should just— No, I want to see this. Robert slapped the napkin and pen down on the table. You've got a PhD from MIT, right? You understand algorithms better than my team, apparently. Then this should be easy for you. Show me a better solution. Alicia looked at the napkin. She looked at Robert's face, red with anger and embarrassment. She looked at David and Patricia, who both seemed deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation. She thought about walking away, about keeping her head down and her mouth shut like she'd been doing for 2 years, about swallowing her pride and accepting her place. But then she remembered sitting in that MIT classroom, one of only 3 women in a sea of male students. She remembered her professor telling her she didn't belong there, that maybe she should consider an easier program. She remembered proving him wrong. She remembered staying up until 3 in the morning working on code, solving problems that everyone said were impossible. She remembered who she really was. I'll need more than a napkin, Alicia said calmly. And about 5 minutes. Robert's eyes widened. He clearly hadn't expected her to accept the challenge. You're actually going to do this? You asked me to prove it, so I will. She looked around the restaurant. Is there a piece of paper I can use? Maybe something from the host stand? Jenny, who had been watching from a distance, quickly brought over several sheets of blank printer paper and a proper pen. Other servers were gathering now, along with some of the kitchen staff. Word was spreading that something interesting was happening. Alicia set the papers on an empty nearby table. She rolled up her sleeves and looked at Robert one more time. What's your current data structure? Give me the specifics. And Robert, trapped by his own ego in the audience that had gathered, began to explain. He had no idea what he'd just unleashed. Robert explained his system with the confidence of someone who thought he couldn't possibly be wrong. He talked about data inputs, processing sequences, and the modified binary search tree his team had implemented. As he spoke, Alicia listened carefully, occasionally nodding, her pen hovering over the blank paper. A small crowd had gathered now. Other diners were craning their necks to see what was happening. The restaurant staff had stopped pretending to work and were openly watching. Gerald, the manager, stood near the kitchen door, looking worried about the scene unfolding in his establishment. When Robert finished, Alicia didn't hesitate. She started writing. Her pen moved quickly across the paper. She drew diagrams, wrote out functions, sketched tree structures. Every few seconds she would pause, think for a moment, then continue. There was no uncertainty in her movements, no second guessing. She worked the way someone does when they know exactly what they're doing. Robert watched with his arms crossed, that smug expression still on his face. But as the minutes passed, something changed. His eyes followed her pen movements. He leaned forward slightly, trying to see what she was writing. The smugness began to crack. David stood up from his seat to get a better view. He was a software engineer himself, had been for 20 years before moving into venture capital. He recognized what he was seeing. His eyebrows climbed higher with each line Alicia wrote. 4 minutes. That's all it took. Alicia straightened up and set down the pen. Done, she said simply. She picked up the papers and handed them to Robert. Here's your problem. Your current system works fine for small to medium datasets, which is probably what you tested it on. But as your data grows, especially if it has any sequential patterns, your binary search tree will become increasingly unbalanced. See this diagram here? She pointed to one of her sketches. This is what your tree probably looks like now. And this is what it'll look like after processing 1 million records with even a slight pattern. Your search time will go from logarithmic to linear. That 40% improvement you're bragging about? Give it 3 months and you'll be running slower than your original system. Robert stared at the papers. His face had gone pale. He flipped through the sheets, looking at her diagrams, her code samples, her mathematical proofs. The solution, Alicia continued, is to implement a red-black tree instead. I've written out the basic structure here. It's self-balancing, which means it maintains optimal performance regardless of input patterns. Your insertion time takes a small hit, maybe 5%, but your overall query performance will be better and more consistent. She pointed to another section. I've also included an alternative approach using a combination of hash tables for frequent lookups and a B tree for range queries. Depending on your specific use case, this might actually be more efficient. The implementation is more complex, but the performance gains are significant. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Even the classical music seemed to have faded into the background. David picked up one of the sheets. His eyes scanned the code, the diagrams, the algorithms. This is brilliant, he said quietly. Robert, she's right. About all of it. Patricia was staring at Alicia with a mixture of shock and admiration. How long have you been working on problems like this? About 8 years, Alicia said. 4 years during my undergraduate degree at MIT, another 4 during my PhD program. Robert's hands were shaking slightly as he held the papers. A PhD? You have a PhD in computer science? Yes, I finished 2 years ago. My dissertation was on optimization algorithms for large-scale distributed systems. I published 3 papers in peer-reviewed journals. One of them won an award at the International Conference on Machine Learning. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Then why? Robert's voice trailed off. He looked at her uniform, at the restaurant around them, unable to complete the question. Alicia's jaw tightened. Why am I serving tables instead of working at a tech company? That's what you want to know? Robert nodded slowly, the arrogance completely gone from his face now. Because I have $210,000 in student loan debt, Alicia said, her voice calm but with an edge to it. Because my mother was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer a year before I graduated, and insurance doesn't cover everything. Because someone had to pay for her treatments, her medications, her surgery. Because my younger brother was accepted to college and I promised our mother before she got sick that I would make sure he could go. She picked up her water pitcher, holding it like a shield. I work here 4 nights a week. On weekends, I bartend at another restaurant. During the day, I do freelance coding work when I can get it. I send out job applications every week to tech companies all over the city. Most don't respond. The ones that do usually reject me after the first phone screening. Patricia had covered her mouth with her hand. David looked like he'd been slapped. Want to know something funny? Alicia continued. I actually applied to your company, Tech Vision Solutions, 4 months ago. I never heard back. Not even a rejection email. My resume probably got filtered out by whatever automated system you use. Too many employment gaps, maybe. Or the system didn't like that my most recent job experience was in food service. Robert's face had gone from pale to gray. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You didn't ask. You just assumed. Alicia's voice cracked slightly just for a moment before she regained control. You saw a black woman in a server uniform and decided you knew everything about me. You decided I wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough, that I must have failed at life somehow to end up here. I didn't mean, yes, you did. Alicia cut him off. You absolutely did. And you're not the first. Do you know how many people have talked down to me over the past 2 years? How many have snapped their fingers at me or called me sweetie or told me to smile more? How many have assumed I'm stupid because I'm serving their dinner? She looked directly at Robert and he couldn't meet her eyes. The difference is you're supposedly one of the smart ones. You run a tech company. You hire people with computer science degrees. You should understand that intelligence and circumstances aren't the same thing. But you don't. You see someone in a uniform and think you're better than them. A woman at a nearby table started clapping. Then another person joined. Within seconds, half the restaurant was applauding. Some people were standing up. A man in a business suit near the window called out, "You tell him." Robert sank into his chair, still clutching Alicia's papers. He looked at David and Patricia, perhaps hoping for support, but they were both staring at him with expressions of disappointment. "Mr. Chen," Patricia said coldly, "I think we need to reconsider our investment." Patricia, "Wait, I've heard enough." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "I don't invest in companies run by people who treat others like garbage." David was already standing. He looked at Alicia and extended his hand. "Miss Alicia." "Alicia Thompson. Miss Thompson, could I give you my card? My firm is always looking for talented people. What you just did here, solving that problem in minutes, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need." Alicia took his card, though her hand was trembling slightly. "Thank you." As David and Patricia headed for the door, Robert sat alone at the table. The papers with Alicia's solution were spread out in front of him, undeniable proof of everything he'd gotten wrong. Around him, the restaurant slowly returned to normal, though people were still whispering, still glancing his way. Alicia turned to walk back to the server station, but Gerald caught her arm. "Take your break," he said quietly. "Take as long as you need." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and disappeared into the back. Robert sat there for another 10 minutes, staring at those papers. The waitress he'd mocked had just humiliated him in front of everyone. She'd proven she was smarter than him, more talented than his whole team. And the worst part? She'd been right about everything. Robert finally left the restaurant an hour later. He'd paid his bill, left without eating, and avoided making eye contact with anyone. The drive home felt longer than usual. He kept replaying the evening in his mind, seeing Alicia's face, hearing the disappointment in Patricia's voice, remembering the way David had looked at him like he was a stranger. When he got home, he poured himself another scotch and sat in his home office. The papers Alicia had written were still in his briefcase. He pulled them out and spread them across his desk. Her handwriting was neat and precise. Her logic was flawless. Every line of code, every algorithm, every solution was exactly what his company needed. He had mocked her, called her stupid, dismissed her like she was nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, short and direct. "We're out. Don't contact us again." Another buzz. An email from David. Similar message, but longer. Professional language about reconsidering the partnership. Concerns about company culture, wishes for future success. Translation: "You screwed up and we want nothing to do with you." Robert set down his phone and rubbed his face. 20 years of building his reputation, and he'd damaged it in one evening. All because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. All because he'd assumed the worst about someone he knew nothing about. His phone buzzed again. Then again. And again. He picked it up and his stomach dropped. Someone had posted about the incident. Not just posted, it was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. A woman who'd been dining at the restaurant had recorded part of the confrontation on her phone. The video was grainy and the audio wasn't perfect, but you could hear Robert's voice clearly. "If you're so smart, prove it." And then later, looking shocked and pale as Alicia explained his company's problems. The post had gone viral. 10,000 shares in 2 hours. The comments were brutal. "This is what's wrong with the tech industry. Imagine being this threatened by a waitress knowing more than you. She has a PhD from MIT and he wouldn't even look at her resume. This is why we need better hiring practices. Someone find out what company this is. I want to make sure I never do business with them. Robert's hands were shaking as he scrolled through the comments. Someone had already identified him. His name was out there. TechVision Solutions was mentioned. People were posting screenshots of his company's website, his LinkedIn profile, articles about his business success. The success he'd been so proud of was now being used against him. His phone rang. It was Michael, his chief operating officer. Please tell me that's not you in that video, Michael said without greeting. Robert closed his eyes. It's me. Robert, what the hell were you thinking? This is everywhere. I've had 3 employees send me the link already. The PR team is freaking out. We're getting emails. Our social media is blowing up. I know. I'm looking at it now. What do we do? This is a disaster. Patricia and David pulled their investment, didn't they? Yes. Great, just great. Michael's voice was tight with stress. We have a board meeting scheduled for next week. This is going to come up. You know it will. After Michael hung up, Robert sat in silence. The house felt too big, too empty. His wife had left him 3 years ago, tired of being married to someone who cared more about work than family. His 2 kids lived with her across the country. He saw them maybe twice a year. He'd told himself that his success made up for it, that building his company was worth the sacrifice. But sitting here now, alone in his expensive house, watching his reputation crumble online, he wondered what it had all been for. The next morning was worse. Robert woke up to find the story had been picked up by tech news sites. CEO mocks waitress with PhD gets schooled, read one headline. Tech industry's bias problem on full display, said another. There were think pieces about hiring discrimination, about how people of color and women were systematically excluded from tech jobs despite being qualified. And Alicia was at the center of it all. Someone had found her LinkedIn profile. Her credentials were listed there. BS and PhD from MIT, published research, award-winning dissertation, and her work history showed the gap. 2 years of nothing but service industry jobs while she'd been sending applications to tech companies across the city, including his. Robert logged into the company's applicant tracking system. He typed in her name. And there it was. Her application from 4 months ago. The system had automatically rejected it. The algorithm flagged employment gap and current position not relevant to role as red flags. Her resume had never reached a human being. He opened her CV. It was impressive. More than impressive. She was exactly the kind of talent he claimed he was always looking for. And his system had thrown her application in the trash. How many others? How many qualified people had his automated system rejected because they didn't fit the perfect profile? Because they had gaps in their employment? Because they'd worked service jobs to pay the bills? His phone rang again. Another board member. Then another. Then reporters started calling, asking for comments. His email inbox was flooded. Some messages were from angry people. Others were from employees asking if the video was real, if this was really how he felt about people. One email caught his attention. It was from Vanessa, one of his senior developers, a black woman who'd been with the company for 5 years. Robert, it read, I've worked for you for half a decade. I've always defended you when people said you didn't care about diversity. I told them you cared about talent, not appearances. After seeing that video, I don't know what to think anymore. Was I wrong about you? Have you been looking down on me this whole time too? I need to know if I'm valued here or if I'm just here to make the numbers look good. Robert read the email 3 times. Vanessa was brilliant, one of his best employees. The thought that she might doubt her place in the company because of his actions made him feel sick. He tried to write a response but couldn't find the right words. What could he say? I'm not like that. But he was like that. He'd proven it at that restaurant. I value you. But if he valued talent, why had his system rejected Alicia? By midday, the company's social media pages were being bombarded. People were leaving 1-star reviews. Employees past and present were sharing their own stories about the company culture. Someone posted about the lack of diversity in leadership positions. Another person talked about being passed over for promotions. The picture being painted wasn't pretty. Robert called an emergency meeting with his executive team. 8 people sat around the conference table and the tension was thick enough to cut. These were people he'd worked with for years, but today they looked at him differently. "We need to address this," said Christina, the head of HR. "The board is demanding answers. Employees are upset. We're losing candidates. 3 people turned down job offers this morning because of the video." "What do you want me to do?" Robert asked, and immediately regretted how defensive he sounded. "An apology would be a start," Michael said. "A real one. Not some corporate PR statement. And then what? An apology doesn't fix this." "No, it doesn't." Christina opened her laptop and turned it toward him. "But this might. We need to completely overhaul our hiring process. Look at these statistics. In the last 2 years, our automated system has rejected 73% of applications before a human ever saw them. Want to guess what the rejection rate is for candidates from underrepresented groups? 89%. Robert stared at the numbers. "That can't be right." "It is. Our algorithm is biased. It favors candidates from specific schools, with specific work histories, with no employment gaps. It's filtering out talented people because they don't fit a narrow profile. People exactly like Alicia Thompson." The name hung in the air. "We need to fix this," Robert said quietly. "All of it. The hiring system, the company culture, everything." "That's a start," Christina said. "But it's going to take more than words. We need action." "Real measurable change," Robert nodded slowly. He looked around the table at faces that had lost respect for him. He thought about Alicia working 3 jobs to survive, about Vanessa wondering if she was valued, about all the talented people his company had rejected without ever giving them a chance. He'd built something successful, but he'd built it on a broken foundation, and now everyone could see the cracks. 3 days after the restaurant incident, Robert did something he hadn't done in years. He admitted he was wrong. Not in a carefully crafted PR statement written by his communications team, not in a vague corporate apology that said everything and nothing at the same time. He posted a video on the company's social media. Just him sitting in his office looking tired and genuine. "My name is Robert Chen, and I'm the CEO of Tech Vision Solutions. By now, many of you have seen the video from La Belle Maison restaurant. That was me. Those were my words. And I was completely, inexcusably wrong." He paused, looking directly at the camera. "I disrespected someone based on nothing but assumptions. I saw a waitress and decided she couldn't possibly be as intelligent or educated as me. I was arrogant. I was biased. And I hurt someone who deserved nothing but respect." The video continued. Robert talked about the changes he was implementing. Removing the automated screening system, requiring human review for every application, hiring an external firm to audit their hiring practices, creating mentorship programs, establishing diversity goals that actually meant something. "But none of this matters if I don't address what really happened. Alicia Thompson applied to work at my company 4 months ago. She has a PhD from MIT, published research, years of expertise, and our system rejected her automatically. She never had a chance. And that's on me." He took a breath. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I am committing to do better." To be better. Starting now, the video ended. The response was mixed. Some people appreciated the honesty. Others said it wasn't enough, that words were easy and action was what mattered. A few thought he was just trying to save his company's reputation, but Robert wasn't done. He found Alicia's contact information through the restaurant. He called her, but she didn't answer. He tried again the next day. On the 3rd attempt, she picked up. "Mr. Chen." Her voice was cold, professional. "Ms. Thompson, thank you for taking my call. I know you have no reason to talk to me." "You're right. I don't. So make it quick." Robert had rehearsed what he wanted to say, but now all the words seemed inadequate. "I want to apologize. Directly to you, not just to the internet. What I did was wrong. How I treated you was unacceptable. You didn't deserve any of it." Silence on the other end. "I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few days," Robert continued. "About my company, about my hiring practices, about myself. And I realized something. I built a company that's successful, but I built it in a way that excludes people. Good people, talented people like you. Mr. Chen, if this is leading to a job offer, I'm not interested." "It's not." "Well, it is, but not in the way you think." Robert stood up, pacing his office. "I'm not calling to offer you a position reporting to someone. I'm calling to ask if you'd be willing to consult for us. We're completely rebuilding our hiring system, our company culture, everything. We need someone who understands what we've been doing wrong, someone who's experienced it firsthand. You want me to fix your problems? The same company that rejected my application without even looking at it? I want to pay you what you're worth to tell us how to be better. Consultant rate, your terms, your schedule. You can keep working your other jobs if you want. This would be on your time. Another long pause. What's the rate? Robert named a figure. It was generous. Very generous. And I wanted in writing that this is a consulting contract with potential for conversion to full-time if, and only if, I decide I want that. Not the other way around. Done. I'll think about it, Alicia said and hung up. 2 days later, she sent an email. She would do it, but with conditions. She wanted complete transparency. She wanted to see every part of the hiring process. She wanted authority to make recommendations and the guarantee that those recommendations would be seriously considered. She wanted to interview employees anonymously to understand the real company culture, not the sanitized version. Robert agreed to everything. Alicia's first day as a consultant was strange. She walked into Tech Vision Solutions wearing professional clothes instead of a uniform. People stared. Some had seen the video. Others had heard about what happened. She could feel the whispers following her down the hallway, but she held her head high. She'd earned this. Not because of the viral video, but because she had the skills and knowledge they needed. She spent 2 weeks interviewing employees, reviewing hiring data, examining the company's policies. What she found wasn't pretty. The automated system was just the tip of the iceberg. There were issues with promotions, with pay equity, with who got access to important projects. The company wasn't intentionally discriminatory, but its systems produced discriminatory results. Her report was 43 pages long. She presented it to Robert and the executive team without sugarcoating anything. Your company has a fundamental problem, she told the room. You say you value talent, but your systems are designed to only recognize a narrow definition of talent. Talent that looks a certain way, comes from certain schools, has a certain type of work history. She pulled up a slide showing statistics. Women make up 32% of your technical staff, but only 12% of senior engineers. People of color are 15% of your workforce, but hold only 8% of leadership positions. And your salary data shows significant gaps even when controlling for experience and role. Christina, the HR director, looked uncomfortable. Michael was taking notes. Robert sat quietly, absorbing every word. The good news, Alicia continued, is that these are fixable problems. But it requires commitment, real commitment, not just diversity training that everyone sits through once a year and forgets about. She spent the next hour outlining recommendations, blind resume reviews, structured interviews, diverse hiring panels, mentorship programs, transparent promotion criteria, regular pay audits, partnerships with organizations that support underrepresented groups in tech. This isn't going to be fast, she warned. Culture change takes time. You're going to make mistakes. Some people will resist, but if you're serious about this, it's possible. Over the next 3 months, things began to change, slowly but noticeably. The company hired a chief diversity officer. They partnered with coding boot camps and community colleges, not just elite universities. They started tracking metrics and holding managers accountable. Robert himself went through training on bias and privilege. It was uncomfortable. He didn't like confronting the ways his own assumptions had shaped his decisions. But he did it anyway. Alicia continued consulting, coming in 3 days a week. She reviewed applications, sat in on interviews, provided feedback, and slowly she began to see that the changes were real. On a Tuesday afternoon, 4 months after the restaurant incident, Robert knocked on the door of the office they'd given Alicia. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. She looked up from her laptop. "What is it?" "I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to ask you something." He sat down across from her. The board approved a new senior director position. Director of Engineering Excellence. It's a leadership role, reporting directly to me. You'd oversee our technical architecture, mentor senior engineers, and continue working on improving our systems. Alicia leaned back in her chair. "Is this a real offer or a publicity stunt?" "It's real. Your consulting work has been invaluable. The changes you've recommended are working. We're attracting better candidates. Our employee satisfaction scores are up. But more than that, you make us better. You challenge us. We need that. I'll need to see the full job description. And the salary." Robert handed her a folder. She opened it and read through the documents. Her expression didn't change, but he saw her pause when she reached the compensation page. "This is a competitive offer," she said carefully. It should be. You're worth it. Alicia looked at him for a long moment. I need to think about it. Take your time. A week later, she accepted. But she had one condition. Part of her signing bonus would fund a scholarship program at the company for students from underrepresented backgrounds in tech, students who were talented but needed help with things like tuition or living expenses or supporting their families. Students like she had been. On Alicia's first official day as Director of Engineering Excellence, she stood in the lobby of Tech Vision Solutions. No uniform this time, just her in professional attire, carrying a laptop bag and a coffee. Jenny from the restaurant had texted her that morning. Go show them what you're made of. Alicia smiled at the message. She'd kept her weekend bartending job, not because she needed it anymore, but because she wanted to, because the people there had supported her when nobody else did, because she never wanted to forget where she came from. As she walked to the elevator, she passed a young woman in the lobby who looked nervous, clutching a folder. A candidate, probably, here for an interview. Good luck, Alicia said with a warm smile. The woman smiled back, looking a little less nervous. Alicia stepped into the elevator. She thought about that night at the restaurant, about Robert's mocking words, about the moment she decided to prove herself. She'd proven it all right. Not just to Robert, but to everyone who'd ever dismissed her. Every company that rejected her application. Every customer who'd snapped their fingers for her attention. Every person who assumed she wasn't smart enough. She'd proven that talent doesn't have a uniform, that intelligence doesn't see